Chapter 10. We have been seeing in Chapter 10, which itself is called the chapter of Vibhuti Yoga, which means the chapter of the glories of God. How do you describe anything which is indescribable, which is beyond description, which defies description, which defies a definition? Everything is, and yet, for the sake, out of compassion, for the sake of someone like Arjun and us, who are ordinary mortals, who are so used to sensing the world only with our five senses, and therefore we try to grasp even that ultimate reality through our senses or our mind or our buddhi at the most. And Bhagwan is at a loss as to how does one explain to someone that I am beyond this deha and pancha indriya and man and buddhi and aham. I am beyond that. How does one explain? So Bhagwan had tried to give a hint in the 10th verse of 10th chapter, saying, Dadami buddhi yogam tam, that those who worship me, at least those who keep their mind on me, I give them buddhi yogam. I give them that ability, that sukshma buddhi. Sukshma buddhi means the ability to see the subtle. I give, dadami. And therefore there is some hope for people like us and Arjun, because he says, yes, I will. That's a promise of Krishna. And in the 11th verse, Bhagwan said that Jnana Deepena Bhasvata, I not only destroy your ignorance, but I also offer the lamp of knowledge, the light of knowledge. Jnana Deepena Bhasvata. Jnana ka deep मैं आता हूँ, लेकिन उसमें conditions of course हैं, that those who are steadfast in the belief of me and keeping also their mind on me, steadfast. That condition is fulfilled. If it is fulfilled, then tesham mena vukampena neva nukampa. He had said that tesham eva anukampartham. 11th verse में उन्होंने first line में कहा था, ऐसे लोग अनुकंपार्थम हो जाते हैं. That means in their lives, then once they have become steadfast in me, their lives, there is no anukampa. That is, there is compassion. There's a lot of anukampa. There's a lot of compassion, but there is no agitation. There's no disturbance. There's no fear, basically. Because it is from fear that everything else arises. All insecurities and all dukkha come from fear. Fear of death, fear of loss, fear of poverty, fear of not being accepted in society, fear of not measuring up to someone else's expectations, fear of this and that, and also fear of course, the cosmic powers or natural calamities. So there's always a fear. Bhagwan says, one who believes in me, that person actually puts all his faith in me and goes beyond these kind of fears. And now we'll come to verse number 18, 1-8. Let's see how Arjun is still pleading. After hearing so many of his vibhuti, Arjun is pleading, Vistarenatmano yogam vibhutim cha janardana bhuyah katayah tripterhi shunyavato nasti me mritam. Shrunvato nasti me mritam. Tripti, मुझे तृप्ति नहीं हो रही है. Which means, no matter how well you explain to me, hey Bhagwan, it is that attraction that I have suddenly developed towards this vast expanse, this new reality, this ultimate truth that you have spoken about, which I didn't know about. Actually, it's not true, because Arjun is a highly educated person and he had completed his entire education. The Vedic education had Vedic scriptures. But yet, when we forget in our battles in the world, when we forget that highest knowledge, we want it again. There is a thirst again. And that's why Arjun is urging Krishna once again and saying that these Amrit words, Amritam, I want to hear again because I seem to be reveling in it. I seem to be rejoicing and attracted to it. So now he's come to that point, Arjun, after so many chapters, where he feels that his priority now is to know the ultimate truth, and all other small battles of life can take care of themselves, and they will be taken care of. Arjun is not going to run away from the battle. Just because he wants the highest truth doesn't mean that all his battle in Kurukshetra is going to be neglected. No, that's the same for us. We have to fight our little battles, whatever they are, in our material world of family and profession and relationships and objects, whatever it is. But they don't seem to have the same priority anymore. They have to be completed, done, finished, you're done and dusted. Now, what is the highest truth? Let me rush to my highest priority. That's what Arjun is doing now after 10 chapters and saying, okay, Kurukshetra will take care of itself. I have my battles to fight. But in the beginning, he had sought help from Krishna for the battle, saying, tell me how I can get out of this battle or this dilemma of killing my own cousins. He was at the battle level. Now he's saying, I'll take care of that sorrow. If you tell me the ultimate truth, that will take care of everything. So it's the same for us. When we are attracted to good food, good shopping, good objects in the world, lots of good friends, good company, lots of wealth, if we get attracted to all those things, then what we do is we say we want more of the same. Yes, we want more of the same. Arjun is saying, yes, Krishna, I'm attracted to your words now. I want more of that same. So out of sheer compassion, Krishna is having to repeat his vibhutis, but using, since this is an indescribable truth, it's beyond words, beyond sensation, beyond indriya. Krishna uses a lot of, Krishna or Ved Vyasji, you can say, uses a lot of symbolism, lot of allegories in the about 10 to 12 verses coming up ahead. So everything is explained through symbolism. Number 19. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Hantate Kathayishyami Divya Hyatma Vibhutayaha. Alas, Hanta, alas, Krishna is saying, do you know that there are so many divine glories? How can I explain? I mean, the world will come to an complete end and I will still not have completed my glories. And they are far too many. They don't come to an end. Pradhanyatah kuru shreshtha. And yet, it's okay. अब उनमें से प्रधान जो हैं, जो प्रोमिनेंट हैं, जो सर्वश्रेष्ठ हैं, उनके बारे में मैं थोड़ा बता देता हूँ. प्राधान्यतः कुरु श्रेष्ठ नास्त्यन्त्यतो विस्तरस्य में. हालांकि उनका अंत, हमारी ग्लोरीज का अंत, नास्त्यन्त्यो है नहीं, न उसका अंत है. ओके, तो फिर कैसे समझाएंगे? So, all the glories that have been, that are going to come up, lots and lots of descriptions, they'll run like a long list. But if you remember, in the 3rd chapter, in the 38th verse already, Bhagwan has said, Dhume navriyate vanhihi. He's saying, I am always there, but I am like that Agni, which is covered up by smoke. And because of the smoke, you seem to say that, no, I don't see the existence of fire. And, you know, when the fire is very heavy, you see only thick smoke billowing all around it. He said, yes, because your world is so full of noise and activity and the mind is running in uncontrollable directions. That is the smoke around it, but yes, the fire is there. Yatha darsho malena cha. And in the same way, he had said in the 3rd chapter that on glass, on mirror, when there is heavy dust which is laden on top of it, how can you see the mirror? How can you see the glass? How can you see the shine and the tej and the brilliance of the glass? No, you can't. So he's saying, okay, I'm warning you that I'm going to tell you the glories, but make sure that the glass is clear, and if it is shining, you will completely be able to see the glories. आवृतम ज्ञानमेतेन, 3rd chapter में ही, उसी श्लोक में, नहीं उससे आगे 39 श्लोक में उन्होंने कहा था आवृतम ज्ञानमेतेन। उसी तरह से ज्ञान भी, हम लोगों का ज्ञान भी, अगर कोई समझाए भी और हम कई कई किताबें पढ़ भी लें, we may read lots and lots of books and chapters and listen to so many discourses here and there, and yet he says it is like that fire which is hidden because of the smoke around it. So gyan hai, but it is hidden because jnanino nityavairinaha, it's that smoke is hidden because of kama rupena kaunteya, because our desires, kama roop is the desires of objects and people and things and projects and ideas. We are chasing something or the other all the time. So Bhagwan is saying आपका जो वैरी है ना, ये उन्होंने 3rd chapter में कहा था, ये जो वैरी, which means the enemy, is your कामरूप. The कामरूपेण कौन्तेय दुष्पुरेणान लेन च, insatiable desires. सिर्फ desires नहीं है, insatiable मतलब बुझती ही नहीं, बुझाए भी बुझती ही नहीं, और ऐसी चीजों से हम बुझाते हैं अपनी तृष्णा, मतलब संसार की तृष्णा, कि वो और भड़क जाती है. सो इट्स लाइक फ्यूल टू फायर. एंड सो ही सेइंग इट इज ऐसी न बुझने वाली डिजायर्स की दुनिया में जब आप रहते हैं काम रूपे न, तब आपका आवृतम ज्ञान में तेना, तो कितना भी ज्ञान हो वो छुपा ही रहता है. बट आउट ऑफ कंपैशन ही सेइंग दैट अनुकंपा, उनकी अनुकंपा है, आउट ऑफ कंपैशन आई विल स्टिल टेल यू इफ यू आर रेडी. एंड अर्जुन्स माइंड सीम्स टू बी रेडी नाउ. It seems that he is in a fit position, a kind of learning stance he has taken to say that yes, I am ready to listen. And therefore, this is the right time for Bhagavan to talk about his glories, about his vibhuti. But he will tell only about the pradhanyatah, only the prominent ones, because there is no end to it. So we will proceed to verse 20 and then come back and see why does he call them pradhan, most prominent of his vibhutis. Okay. So number 20, verse number 20. Aham atma gudakesha sarvabhutashaya sthitah ahamadishcha madhyam cha bhutanamanta eva cha. Hey Gudakesh, hey Arjun, I am seated in the hearts of everyone. सर्वभूता शयस्थितः, मैं तो वहीं स्थित हूँ. सर्वभूत, भूत यानी बीइंग्स, हर बीइंग के अंदर मैं ही हूँ. और अहम आदिश्च मध्यम च, मैं तो बिगिनिंग हूँ, मिडिल हूँ और अंत भी हूँ हर चीज का. तो आप मुझे कहाँ ढूंढ रहे हो? दिस इज ऑफ कोर्स अ general statement that Bhagavan is starting with. Then he may come down to particulars, which means that I am immanent. Immanent means in and through everything and everyone. All living things, plant, animals and humans, all living things have my essence in and through, which is the English word which means immanent. So I am immanent. I am integral part of everything. What does he mean in the second line when he says I am the Adi, the Madhyam and the Ant? It simply is a way of, poetic way of saying that, for example, if there is a wave in the ocean and the wave says, where is the beginning of the ocean and the end of the ocean and the middle of the ocean? In me. In me. In the wave, the ocean is the middle of the wave, the beginning and the end of the wave. तो उस वेव के अंदर कोई, उसमें कोई जगह नहीं है, कोई लोकेशन नहीं है, कोई लोकेल नहीं है कि वो कहें अच्छा आत्मा, मैं तो बॉडी हूँ, मैं अपने आप को बॉडी समझता हूँ. आई कंसिडर माई सेल्फ दिस ब्यूटिफुल वेव which people come to watch and they come to surf on me. I'm very proud of my texture and my color. Okay, but where is the ocean? How can the wave ask that? The wave is the ocean. तो इस तरह वो कहते हैं कि मैं मध्य भी हूँ और अहम भी हूँ और अंत, आदि भी हूँ और अंत भी हूँ. अहम आदि, अहम मध्यम, aham antah. In the same way, let's think of another example, and that's a mirage. A mirage that you see in the desert. Suppose you're going and the sun is shining at such an angle on the sand that the sand particles are refracting the light in such a way that it looks like a body of water. And from far you say, oh, mirage. I mean, you don't know it's a mirage. You say, oh, pool of water, and you rush towards it. Okay. So when you come close to it and you feel the texture of the sand, it's as dry as any other sand all around. Then where did the mirage go? So we can say that the mirage arose out of the play of light and sand in the beginning, and it played on the light and sand, and it disappeared on the sand. So where is the mirage? But हमने देखा है, I felt it, I experienced it. Yes, you experienced it. You can experience this life also. मेरा परिवार और ये वस्तु और मेरा जन्म, मेरी मृत्यु, everything we experience as us. But right through, in and through it, there is only one and one truth, and that is the Atma. The rest is like a mirage. वो आता है, उस पर play करता है संसार में और क्षीण हो जाता है, including our bodies and our senses, etc. Another example given is that of thoughts. Where do the thoughts, if I'm sitting silently by the window and just gazing out at some trees far in the distance, and suddenly a thought from nowhere, a thought just pops into the mind. And then I think about that thought, maybe, so suppose it's a thought of a particular dance performance. And I think about it and I revel in it and I enjoy it. And after some time that thought is gone. And then another thought takes its place. So where did the thought come from? Where did it play? And where did it die? So how can we experience even a thought without consciousness? It plays on consciousness, it arises in consciousness, it disappears in consciousness. उस consciousनess का substratum जो है ना, वो it is the underlying substratum of everything. इसलिए वो thought का मध्य भी था, beginning भी था, end भी था. What? The consciousness. That's why Bhagavan says, I am that madhya, aham madhya and anta and adi. This is a poetic way of explaining to Arjun in the 20th verse. That means that this is actually the core. If we see closely, this actually is the core and essential teaching of the entire Gita or of the Vedas. Because in all the Vedas and through Gita, all that Bhagavan is trying to explain to Arjun is that we have to come towards that self-knowledge, that I am consciousness. And to come towards that self-knowledge is the only goal. And if you did not have that consciousness, all of Gita somehow points only to that fact. If you did not have that consciousness, where would the thoughts play? Where would even your knowledge, self-knowledge, yeah, dunya ki knowledge, where would it play? Where would it, like a movie on a screen, the screen has to be there for the projection. Where would this knowledge and these thoughts project? It cannot project in a vacuum. So consciousness is where it plays. Even when we are in meditation, that meditation experience is playing on consciousness. So if you see that aham madhya, aham adi, aham antah is actually the core of the entire Gita, basically. That I am everywhere and I am the essence of everything. I am not in heaven far away somewhere. No, how can I be in heaven? It is you, it is us. So it is Arjun, Tat Tvam Asi. So he has arrived at Tat Tvam Asi. Now, so what about Arjun? Then who am I? Suppose this thought is coming in Arjun's mind as he is listening to Krishna, and this thought may even come to us. Then who am I, Krishna? So Krishna has already indicated that out of all the vibhutis in the world, Arjun, you yourself are one of my vibhutis and one of my most prominent vibhutis. Why? Because human beings have the ability to arrive at self-knowledge. They have the Sukshma Buddhi. They have that equipment to know the highest. And they are the only creatures. Only human birth has the potential to know the Paramatma. To know first the Atma and then the Paramatma. No other creature in the world has that potential. Imagine. And therefore, Arjun, you are actually my highest Vibhuti. One of my glories is a human being, says Krishna. But we don't know it. So we waste Bhagwan's glory as well as our human glory. We waste it on Kamini, Kirti, Kanchan, fame, wealth, money, relationships, desires, and insatiable desires which are never satisfied. So we do waste our potential. So if you know yourself, Krishna is saying, then you know me. As simple as that. What is it that we are experiencing right now? Of course, Krishna has said, you are my highest Vibhuti. But what we are experiencing ourselves is that this little bhokta, this little enjoyer of all the Vastu Vyakti, Paristhiti, Ghatna of the world. I am the bhokta, I am the enjoyer. Why can't I enjoy this or that? Why can't I experience this or that which others are experiencing? I am the bhokta, you see. अपनी आइडेंटिटी हमने एक भोक्ता, एक एंजॉयर ऑफ द वर्ल्ड में सीमित कर दी है. All material things. So we define ourselves by that. And therefore, one of the Swamis had said कि अगर हम इतने दयनीय स्थिति में रहेंगे हमेशा, तो भगवान की हाईएस्ट विभूति कैसे मांगेंगे या कैसे पाएंगे? So one of the Swamis had said, you ask a beggar, what is the highest thing you want? एक गरीब आदमी से, beggar से पूछ लो, what is the highest thing you want? तो वो ज्यादा से ज्यादा क्या कहेगा? मुझे ये बेगिंग बोल जो मेरा है ना, वो सिल्वर का कर दो. आई वॉन्ट ए सिल्वर बेगिंग बोल. बट बेगिंग बोल वही है, क्योंकि उसमें पात्रता उसकी उतनी ही है. हमारा बेगिंग बोल एक पात्र है और वो पात्रता उतनी है. उसमें क्या हमको चाहिए? दुनिया की खुशियाँ, संसार की वस्तु, एंड ऑल दीज ऑब्जेक्ट्स एंड पीपल एंड मोर वेल्थ एंड कलेक्शन ऑफ थिंग्स एंड मोर जॉयज. एंड अब जब जॉयज मिलने लगते हैं तो उसमें जो चमक होती है हर जॉय की, हर खुशी की, वो कम होने लगती है नेचुरली. दैट इज द लॉ ऑफ द संसार. तो उसकी चमक या उसकी एंजॉयमेंट, उसका प्लेजर कम होने लगता है, तो फिर हमको फिर से उसी दौड़ में लगना पड़ता है. तो दैट इज आवर बेगिंग बोल. हमारी पात्रता अगर इतनी है तो भगवान उतना ही देंगे. ओके, तथास्तु, हैव योर सिल्वर बोल. तो तुमको हम सब उसी में रह जाएंगे. इसलिए भगवान इज ट्राइंग टू एक्सप्लेन टू हिम दैट यू हैव द पोटेंशियल टू नो द हाईएस्ट, एंड देयरफॉर लिसन टू माय हाईएस्ट विभूति. हो सकता है यू विल one day achieve it or realize it. But at the same time, if you remember in the 17th verse of this same chapter 10, Arjun had said, केशु केशु च भावेशु. ऐसी कौन से फॉर्म्स हैं, रूप हैं, जिस पर हम आपकी चिंतयोसी भगवन्मया, मैं आपका चिंतन कर सकता हूँ. यानी कि आई वॉन्ट टू होल्ड माई माइंड. भगवान, बिलीव मी, आई रियली वॉन्ट टू होल्ड माई माइंड विच इज रनिंग अवे इन द वर्ल्ड. द सिंसियरिटी ऑफ अर्जुन इज वेरी टचिंग. ही सेज यस, बट आई वॉन्ट टू कॉन्सेंट्रेट. लेकिन उस चिंतन के लिए, उस कॉन्सेंट्रेशन के लिए मुझे कुछ फॉर्म तो दो. केशु 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 च भावेशु चिंतयोसी भगवान मया. ओ लॉर्ड, प्लीज गिव मी सम फॉर्म. भगवान इज सेइंग, हे भगवान, अब हमको फॉर्म्स देने पड़ेंगे फॉर दैट विच इज फॉर्मलेस. भगवान को भी भगवान याद आते हैं. एंड सो बिकॉज वी आर लिविंग सो मच विद इन अमंग ऑब्जेक्ट्स, दैट वी फील दैट ऑब्जेक्ट्स ही डिफाइन कर सकते हैं भगवान को. एनीवे, दैट इज आवर वीकनेस, अर्जुन्स वीकनेस, नॉट भगवान वीकनेस. तो अभी करीब 22 वर्सेस ऐसे होंगे, 22 वर्सेस, where we are going to be bombarded by the vibhuti of Krishna. Most of the references are to the Vedic age, and some of them are to the Puranic age, where the Puranas, the stories. So we may or may not relate to many of them, the references. but they have a significance, and we'll find the significance in how many vibhutis? All of 75. So tighten your seat belts. Here we go. 75 vibhutis. What is the purpose of saying so many vibhutis? Only so that, because Arjun said, Keshu Keshu cha bhaveshu chintayosi, mujhe chintan karna hai. So each one will help us meditate or keep our mind on that invisible, that subtle truth. It is invisible, it is subtle, yes. But on that truth, it will just help us anchor our mind. That is the whole purpose. Now, let's go to verse 21. Here we go. So, Bhagavan says, so suno, meri vibhutiya. Aditya namaham Vishnuhu. Aditya, jitne Aditya hain, among all the 12 Aditya, 12 माने गए हैं, उनमें से विष्णु, I am the most important, I am the Aditya. तो हर जो चीज आपको दिखती है उसमें सबसे उत्कृष्ट और सबसे उत्तम जो फॉर्म है उसका, उसमें मैं हूँ. मैं हूँ मीनिंग मैं हर चीज में हूँ, लेकिन मेरा प्रोमिनेंट फॉर्म उसमें झलकेगा. बिकॉज इट्स लाइक अ मिरर where the sun of course is shining even on a dusty mirror, even on a dull lake, even in ditch water, the sun will always shine. Consciousness या भगवान कहीं गए नहीं है, लेकिन it will not reflect off and you will not recognize it. But हर चीज में जब हम उसकी उत्तम फॉर्म, द हाईएस्ट फॉर्म ढूंढेंगे, तब हो सकता है कि भगवान की ग्लोरी उसमें से झलके, चमक सके. इसलिए सेकंड, ज्योतिषाम रविरम शुमान. ज्योतिष, ज्योति जो होती है, द लाइट, इन दैट लाइट रवि, आई एम रवि. among the lights I am Ravi, which is I am the sun. That of course is quite obvious. Even the science has proven that the sun is the source of all energy that we experience, that all objects and plants and animals experience and grow out of. That is the only source of energy. So we know that among all the lights in the world, sun is the highest. Okay. Second line, Marichir Marutam Asmi. Marichi, there are 49 types of winds. You know, winds, storm hai, squall hai, little wisps of wind hai, and storms, all kinds. There are 49 which have been listed even by scientists. उसमें से मैं सबसे उत्तम कौन सा हूँ? Marutam, the wind. So Marutam is the highest kind of wind. And that's why Hanuman ji ka naam bhi Maruti pada tha, because he is as fast as the wind. And last one, Nakshatranam aham shashi. सब नक्षत्रों में मैं चंद्रमा हूँ. I am the highest. Okay, so these are all allegoric, symbolic, and many of them are even in story form. But the subject is the same. The subject is I am that consciousness which is my true identity in everything, which is too subtle for our minds to grasp. But I am the same. पुराणों में एक कहानी है, बलिराज ने एक यज्ञ किया था, और उस यज्ञ में विष्णु had appeared, and Vishnu appeared in the dwarf form, which is the Vaman incarnation. तो सब incarnation में से वामन या dwarf form में वो आए. तो Vishnu said, okay, and now what is it that you can offer me? So Baliraj said, I want to make an offering to you really, so why can't you take as much land as your steps can cover? So suddenly Vishnu turned into this huge, massive giant, right from a dwarf, from a Vaman, to a huge giant where his head was also not visible in the skies, and he took one giant step, and that step went beyond this earth to another loka. So that means the land that Vishnu wanted to claim from Baliraj is not only this loka but even another loka, and then the third step he took was right on the head of Baliraj. So second step was in another loka and the third was right on the head of Baliraj. Now What is this? All Puranic stories, they of course, they seem like fairy tales and they are imaginary, please remember, but they are all meant for the common man to take away some lesson or some idea. The idea here is that the last step of Vishnu on the head of Baliraj was to crush his ahankar. And when he bowed his head and Vishnu stepped on his ahankar was destroyed, which means मेरा यज्ञ था और मैं आपको कुछ देना चाहता हूँ, मेरा ममत्व, that was destroyed. Which means what? That the obstacles to our realization, all obstacles, whatever we want to realize in the highest truth, as the highest truth, is our ahankar is the big obstacle. Our mamatva, mera, mine, the self of possession. And that self of possession actually comes from aham. Agar aham nahi hota na, this entity called me, वो अहम नहीं होता तो मेरा और माइन ममत्व भी नहीं होता actually. तो after this experience, Baliraj did not need another lesson. Like Arjun is saying, फिर समझाइए. Baliraj understood his lesson, and after that he gave away all his wealth. He was a big king actually, but he gave away all his wealth, and finally he also gave up his ahankar. So he realized that the experience of that ultimate truth is impossible unless I give up, of course, my worldly possessions and my ahankar. Does it mean we have to give up our worldly possessions? What will happen to my new car and this new house I have just renovated? And what about my family? They will be devastated. No. Here the idea is, Vairagya is a mental state. It means that I have all these things around me because I have been born in a certain position and situation, but I have to mentally withdraw my attachment to these things. That Vairagya, dispassion and detachment can be understood as giving away of all the wealth which Baliraj did. Of course, in life also, many people do that. You have seen many big corporate, the richest men in America, some of them, at the end of their life they say, what is this? Melinda, you've heard of the Melinda Foundation. At the end of the day, we've become the richest people on earth. So what? Now what? And then they give away everything. One fine day they write it off to a foundation, which is of course which will be run by other people, because what is ours today belonged to somebody else yesterday. How did they gather their wealth? Or we also for ourselves. It belonged to someone else and it was somewhere else. The salary came, the objects came, and the wealth came from somewhere else. And after us, it will belong to someone else. The moment they realize that, so we have this Bill and Melinda is only one example. There are so many. There's also Azim Premji Foundation in India and a host of other millionaires, just like Baliraj. One fine day they realize, so what? So what if we are the richest people? And these great foundations are a way for them to give back to the world and say, after us, this will go back to someone else, and it came from someone else. And therefore, in this way, one can also give up ahankar as well as give up the wealth. Not literally, but in a way that is useful for society. So that's one way in which maybe we can come closer to that tattva which Bhagwan is trying to explain to Arjun. And now we are coming to some more vibhuti in verse number 22. Vedanam samavedosmi devanamasmi vasava indriyanam manaschasmi bhutanamasmi chetana. Among all the Vedas, I am Samved, because in Samved it is said that it is the very essence of Rigved. It is in Rigved, but it is said it's a musical. The philosophy of music is based in Samved. It is somehow considered the highest by Ved Vyasa. So he said, among all the Vedas, I am Samved. And among all the gods, Devanam Asmi Vasava. Among all the gods, what is God actually here? God is just Deva. Here Dev doesn't mean this ultimate reality we are talking about. In the common man's head, that's what is got fixed. Here Dev is just the faculty and the power that our Indriyas have. So the eyes have the Devata of sight. The ears have the devta of hearing. That's the faculty. That faculty or that capacity, let's call it, is the deva. So among all the devas, I am Vasavaha, Indra, which means I am the Indriyas, because it is through our Indriyas, our senses, that we are able to experience the whole world. And therefore he says, I am the Indriya. And in the second line he says, among the senses, Indriyaon mein, Indriyanam Manaschasmi. Among all the faculties, among all your faculties of Deha, Man, Buddhi, I am the Manaha, Manaschasmi. हर चीज में जो वो नेम करेंगे उसमें सबसे उत्तिष्ठ, सबसे उत्तम चीज वो ही है, वो नेम कर रहे हैं हर चीज में. तो दिस इज मनः. अमंग ऑल आवर फैकल्टीज आवर मन इज द हाईएस्ट फैकल्टी. सो व्हाई? बिकॉज इट, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, it has a strongest power to take us to the highest or drag us to the lowest. It has that kind of power. It's like the horses of the chariot. It can drag us, and it can also help us concentrate. So the first thing any very, very basic meditation class will tell you, okay, so watch your mind. Where is the mind going? First thing we have to watch is mind, which means it is the gateway. The mind is the gateway towards that ultimate truth. Controlling the mind or quietening the mind or silencing the mind is not the ultimate realization. No, it is a gateway. बस उसके थ्रू हम हाईएस्ट पा सकते हैं. सो अमंग ऑल आवर फैकल्टीज, अगर हम ज्यादा बोल भी ना सके एक दिन, काश ऐसा हो सकता तो इतनी शांति होती. तो फिर कोई ज्यादा दुख नहीं होता. सुन ना सके, ओके, लाइफ हैज चेंज्ड अ लिटिल बिट. देख ना सके, यस, लाइफ हैज चेंज्ड अ लॉट मोर. स्पर्श ना कर सके, यस, देयर इज सम डिफिकल्टी इन सेंसेशन. अरे लेकिन मन ना हो तो, आई मीन मन काम ही ना करे तो, so there is complete darkness. Therefore he says, I am Manaha. And Bhutanam Asmi Chetana. Among all the human beings, and not only human beings, Bhut actually stands for all living things. Among all the beings, what am I? Guess what? I am Chetana. I am that consciousness. क्योंकि हम अपने आप को जो भी समझे, हमने अपने आप को जो भी आइडेंटिटी दे दी हो आज तक, मैं ये हूँ, मैं फला हूँ, मेरा औधा और मेरी आयु और मेरा रूप और रंग ऐसा है. बट अपार्ट फ्रॉम ऑल दैट, देयर इज ओनली वन थिंग दैट स्टैंड्स aloof, apart and glorious and supreme in all of us, and that is our consciousness, our Chetana. So he's saying, okay, look for me, that's where I am among all the creatures. I am the highest in the consciousness. I am the highest in all the creatures. Why? Because it is only consciousness which can observe all the senses, all the sensations. It's consciousness which can observe the mind. Mind में क्या हो रहा है? Sensations हमारे देह में क्या हो रहा है? There has to be one observer apart from all these. Mind cannot see itself. Mind cannot analyze itself. Buddhi does that. Who can watch the Buddhi? Has to be another Sakshi. So consciousness is that ultimate Sakshi. That witness consciousness, right? और कॉन्शियसनेस को कौन देख सकता है? ये क्वेश्चन अगर किसी के मन में आए तो फिर बताना मुश्किल है, क्योंकि दिस इज सेल्फ इफल्जेंट, ये स्वप्रकाशित है. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट देयर इज नो लाइट टू शो द कॉन्शियसनेस. जैसे कि बिजली, जब बिजली कौंधती है, हम आकाश में ताक रहे हैं, रात को बारिश हो रही है और आकाश में एकदम अंधकार छाया हुआ है, इट्स पिच डार्क ओवर देयर, एंड सडनली आई सी अ फ्लैश ऑफ लाइटनिंग. वाओ, व्हाट अ ब्यूटीफुल साइट. लेकिन मैंने लाइटनिंग को किस प्रकाश में देखा? क्योंकि अभी तो अंधकार था, ना तो सूरज है, ना मैंने टॉर्च जलाया जैसे कि टॉर्च से देख लेते. तो किस लाइट में हमने देखा उस लाइटनिंग को उसी की लाइट में देखा. वज्रपात जब हुआ, लाइटनिंग फ्लैश्ड, एंड इन द लाइट ऑफ दैट लाइटनिंग वी सॉ द लाइट. सिंपल, इट इज सेल्फ इफल्जेंट लाइक द सन. सन को हम किस लाइट में देखते हैं? स्वयं उसकी लाइट में देखते हैं। इसलिए ये कभी ना हम पूछने की गलती करें, हाँ कॉन्शियसनेस कैन ऑब्जर्व एवरीथिंग, माय माइंड, माय बॉडी, माय मन, माय बुद्धि, और उसको कौन देख रहा है, वो कैसा दिखता है? दैट इज द क्वेश्चन विच डज नॉट which begs an answer, but which it cannot be described in words. It is self-effulgent. All right. Now, some more vibhutis coming up. And number 23. And as I said, this will be a fast ride. Rudranam Shankaraschasmi. So, among the Rudra, among the destroyers. Now Rudra are the destroyers. Now आपको destroyers में कौन दिखाई देता है? Naturally हम सबसे पहले हम याद करते हैं शंकर को, because we say that among the creator, the destroyer and the sustainer, Shankar is the destroyer. So Rudranam, among all the destroyers, I am Shankar, Shankaraschasmi. Why is this Shankar always described as the destroyer? Now, the common definition which we find in many places is that he is angry, he destroys, and therefore he stands for a very powerful destructive power. Now, Chinmay ji has given a definition where he says all destruction happens in order for new construction to happen. If there is no destruction, there will be no room for new construction. And therefore, this destruction may not be taken as a negative. And that's why Shankarji is actually worshipped as a god, although he is a destroyer. For example, a flower has to be destroyed in order to give birth to fruit. A fruit must die in order to show the seed. A seed must die in order to create the seedling. So हम क्या कहेंगे, अरे ये तो बहुत destructive है? Not at all. That destruction has to happen in order to find new construction, new life. And it also applies to our spiritual life. If our spiritual life has to spring forth, to take root, and to blossom and flower, the material life has to be destroyed in the mind. Man se. Once again, I emphasize, we don't have to take a potli and go to the Himalayas. In the mind, if there is a detachment, a kind of dispassion, a kind of distance from all that I possess, and from all that I own, and from all that I think is my relationship, and from all that I think that I am. If there is a dispassion, it's enough. It's enough. Bhagavan says, yes, that is the destruction which is needed for your spiritual life to be born. And therefore, this is constructive destruction. And therefore, Rudranam Shankaraschasmi. I am Shankar among all the Rudras, the destroyers. Okay. And what about the next? Vittesho Yaksharakshas. Vittesho Yaksharaksham. Yaksham. Vittesho Yaksharakshasam. Okay. Among the Rakshasa and the Yaksha, among the demons, I am, guess what? You will never guess this. Yaksharakshasam. I am Vittesho. Vittesh. You know, Vittesh is wealth. Or Vitt is wealth actually. Vitt. और वित्त के ईश्वर वित्तेश is कुबेर. तो उन्होंने कुबेर का नाम नहीं लिया है, उन्होंने सिर्फ कहा है वित्त के ईश्वर. वित्तेश जो है, he is the divine cashier. ये कहाँ पता चलता है हमको? पुराणों की कथाओं में. तो पुराणों की कथाओं में all the wealth of the world है, जो है उसका divine cashier is कुबेर. लेकिन पुराणों में ये भी दिखाया गया है कि वो भी वेद व्यास की ही कृति है. आप अगर देखेंगे कुबेर की, अगर आपने कहीं भी कृति देखी हुई है, इमेज देखी है, he is shown as a very grotesque, very ugly, and with a very fat belly almost reaching out to the ground, a large protruding belly, and with teeth which are very sort of greedy, teeth which are protruding out of his mouth, and he is standing on 3 legs. What an ugly figure. What is the significance of depicting Kuber, the Ishwar of Vitta, the god of wealth or the divine cashier, whatever you call it? Why? Because everything in the Puranas and the Vedas and in Gita, please, we must remember, is actually very, very symbolic. And we need masters like Shankaracharya, Vidyaranya, Chinmayaji, Vivekanandji. We need masters like that to actually help us see the symbolism. Otherwise, what happens? We see the symbols, we start worshipping the symbols. And here it is symbolized that materialism is what this Kuber signifies. And materialism is materialism in the sense which is unchecked. Unchecked materialism, ye bhi chahiye, wo bhi chahiye, is actually grotesque and ugly. ये caricature होता है ना, a kind of ugly cartoon, caricature बनाया गया है पुराणों में. तो कैपिटलिज्म का अगर कभी कैरिकेचर बनाना हो कि कैपिटलिज्म, असली कैपिटलिज्म या फिर रैम्पेंट, लेट्स से, कैपिटलिज्म हैज इट्स गुड पॉइंट्स, इट हैज brought a lot of prosperity and happiness to the world and equality in some ways. I won't go into the political debate, although it's very tempting. So capitalism in its best form, let's say, is a kind of blessing. And yet, if we want to display the worst form of capitalism, then we should pick out the image of Kuber, standing on 3 legs with belly which is protruding out, with a mouth which is greedy and teeth hanging out, and standing on. So grotesque cartoon ऐसा बनाया कि आप उसकी तरफ आकर्षित ना हो, लेकिन हम आकर्षित हैं. In fact, the fat belly sticking out almost to the ground is a symbolic of hoarding. Hoarding यानी इकट्ठा करना, एकत्र करना, to want to accumulate all kinds of things and wealth and possessions and name and fame and everything. Accumulation and hoarding का प्रतीक है. लेकिन अब हमने क्या किया है इन पुराणों की कथाओं को कि हम शंकर भगवान को पूजेंगे, thinking that he will protect me. कुबेर को भगवान बना के पूजते हैं कुछ लोग. Believe it or not, yes, they do that. But that is only because they have taken the symbols from our scriptures and forgotten about the substance. They have taken the form and forgotten the substance. इसलिए स्क्रिप्चर्स पढ़ना जरूरी है, क्योंकि अगर हम स्क्रिप्चर्स बिना पढ़े हम स्ट्रीट्स पर चले आएंगे और फिर कहेंगे कि मेरा धर्म ये और मेरा धर्म वो. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, मेरा तो इसमें है नहीं कुछ, बिकॉज देर इज नो सेंस ऑफ possession in this. Bhagavan has said very clearly that I am in every creature. So how can there be a sense of mine and yours? In the last verse, previous verse, he said, Bhutanam asmi chetana. I am in every bhuta, in every human being, in every creature. Bhutanam asmi, as consciousness, chetana. तो हम स्ट्रीट्स पर चले आते हैं, मेरा धर्म आपका धर्म, मेरी बिलीफ आपकी बिलीफ, etc. So be careful about the symbols and worshipping Kuber. I've taken some time to describe the ugly, grotesque creature which stands for rampant materialistic capitalism, that is Kuber Devata. Bhagavan has not forgotten to call him Ishwar of wealth. They are all Ishwar because they are powerful. Vasunam, next line. Vasunam pavakaschasmi. Among the seasons, and they are said to be 8 seasons as our scriptures have divided it, and the seasons are Vasant, Varsha, Sharad, Hemant, Shishir and Grishma. पर आप कहेंगे ये तो 6 ही हैं खाली. Okay, there are 6 seasons, but when we experience the seasons, each season, here season stands also for outer reality, the external reality of the world. समझ लीजिए ये सिंबल है कि बाहर सीजन्स चेंज हो रहे हैं, हमारी एक्सटर्नल रियलिटीज चेंज होती रहती है. एनीवे, सीजन्स की तरह हर कोई चीज चेंज होती रहती है, लेकिन उसको हर कोई एक्सटर्नल रियलिटी को देखने के लिए हम सिर्फ 2 ही दृष्टि से देखते हैं. हम देखते हैं इधर विथ हैप्पीनेस, सुख, इसमें मुझे कितना सुख मिल रहा है या दुख, इसमें मुझे अच्छा नहीं लग रहा, सुख या दुख, राग या द्वेष, इन दोनों ही दृष्टि से हम हर एक एक्सटर्नल रियलिटी को देखते हैं. दिस इज आवर ओनली पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ द वर्ल्ड. सो वी कैन कॉल इट 8, somehow we can call it 8, 6 seasons plus the 2 the rag dvesh with which we observe the world. ये है ऋतु. We can call it the whole chakra, the ऋतु. So the important thing to remember here is that हमारे 2 internal seasons को राग द्वेष अगर समझ लीजिए, just for the sake of understanding, इंटरनल सीजन्स है हमारे राग अट्रैक्शन एंड द्वेष रिवल्शन और एवर्शन, और एक्सटर्नल सीजन्स तो जो कुछ भी चेंज हो रहा है. नाउ ये एग्जाम्पल को समझाने के लिए कई ऋषियों ने बताया है कि एक एग्जाम्पल तो सिंपल है कि अगर हमारा मन खुश है एंड आई एम एक्सट्रीमली हैप्पी एंड आई एम रिवेलिंग इन सम काइंड ऑफ हैप्पीनेस, तब हमें ऑटम में जो ट्रीज एकदम नेकेड हो जाते हैं और सब पतझड़ हो जाता है, उस नेकेड ट्रीज को देखते हुए भी हमें खुशी और ब्यूटी और ग्लोरी दिख सकती है. क्यों? हमारा मन खुश है. इसलिए मन खुश है तो ऑटम में भी आई कैन फाइंड दैट हैप्पीनेस. और जब हमारा मन एकदम दुखी है and I am completely destroyed by my own unhappiness, my man, I mean, I can't be destroyed, my man is destroyed by some kind of niggling unhappiness, dissatisfaction, anger, resentment, काम, क्रोध, मद, लोभ और greed, in all that unsatisfied desires, in all that, आप मुझे वसंत ऋतु में when the flowers and the spring of flowers and the fragrances in the air, आप मुझे वहां खड़ा कर दो and I will still feel unhappy. That's why it is said कि मैं हर सीजन का, वसु नाम का हर एक्सटर्नल सीजन stands for all the external situation of our life, मैं केवल पावक हूँ, फायर हूँ, अग्नि, विच मीन्स आई एम दैट मेंटल स्टेट. आपका जो मेंटल स्टेट है मैं वही हूँ. डजंट मैटर व्हाट द एक्सटर्नल रियलिटी इज. सो दिस इज अ नाइस वे ऑफ एक्सप्लेनिंग that the mental state actually dictates whether we find the highest truth, whether we find happiness, whether we find anything in the world. And therefore, that's why in the previous verse, Bhagavan has already said that among all the indriya, the man is actually the most powerful. Indriyanam manaschasmi. And the last symbol in verse 23, meru shikharina maham. Meru shikarina maham. Meru, yani among all the peaks of the world, all the highest mountains of the world, I am Meru. Among all the shikhars, among shikhar is peaks actually, I am Meru. I am the highest peak. Now Meru is where? हमने तो एवरेस्ट के बारे में सुना है, फला so many thousand feet, 8,000 something. अब मेरू कहाँ है? Okay, so Meru is a mythological mountain. And, it is there in the Puranas as a mythological mountain. And mythology में ये भी बताया गया है कि उस mountain के इर्द गिर्द scattered land pieces हैं. और guess what? Those land pieces are 7 in number. And today we have on our map 7 continents. So वो भी मैच करता है कि उनको ये भी पता था कि 7 continents हैं. और उसमें से उन्होंने कहा था, पुराणों में मतलब कहा था कि जम्बू द्वीप सबसे ज्यादा सेंट्रल है, सेंटर ऑफ द अर्थ है. तब हम देखेंगे जम्बू द्वीप कहाँ है, देन वी फिगर आउट फ्रॉम पुरानास कि अरे ये जम्बू द्वीप तो सेंट्रल एशिया का रेफरेंस है. और फिर हम देन वी लुक एट द वर्ल्ड द वे इट इज, द वे इट हैज बीन डिवाइडेड इनटू लॉन्जिट्यूड्स एंड लैटिट्यूड्स, एंड से नो, सेंट्रल एशिया इज नॉट द सेंटर ऑफ द अर्थ, द एग्जैक्ट सेंटर. तो ये कैसे हुआ? तो वी डोंट नीड टू टेक इट लिटरली सेंटर ऑफ अर्थ, एकदम फिजिकली ज्योग्राफिकली सेंटर ऑफ अर्थ, उनका ये मतलब था ही नहीं. पुराणों की कहानी पढ़ने में यही मजा है. यू हैव टू लुक फॉर द मोस्ट हिडन एंड द मोस्ट सीक्रेट एंड द मोस्ट डिलाइटफुल मैसेजेस विच आर हिडन ओवर देयर. तो इनका ये मतलब था कि सेंट्रल एशिया इज द प्लेस वेयर देयर विल बी अ फील्ड ऑफ इन्फ्लुएंस, एक इनविजिबल फील्ड ऑफ इन्फ्लुएंस वहां से एमिनेट होगा बिकॉज ऑफ द स्पिरिचुअल नॉलेज which will rise from that region. And Meru, the highest peak, is supposed to be there. Meru is a mythological mountain again. हम ढूंढने ना निकल जाएं उसको Central Asia में. Again, it means that the highest peak is there, which means the highest knowledge is housed in Central Asia. And we know very well, the historians have proved it now, that Vedas emanated in Central Asia, and at least the Aryans did, and the fire worshippers did, and we are the fire worshippers, the Aryans so-called. And they moved from Central Asia and scattered and moved towards the Gangetic plain in India, etc., etc. You know your history. And therefore it is proved that this highest knowledge was carried, which we call now the Vedic knowledge, from this region. And therefore the Vedas flow from this Gyan Ganga. So from the Meru flows the Gyan Ganga. Now the Ganga is not again a literal physical river. It is the Ganga of Gyan, of knowledge. So easy to understand when we break it up like this. And Bhagwan says, in that Gyan Ganga, on that highest Meru peak, in that beautiful mythological on top of that Meru mountain, I reside. I meaning that ultimate highest knowledge. Again, symbolism here. So Arjun भी सोच रहे होंगे कि केशु केशु च भावेशु मैंने क्यों पूछ लिया, क्योंकि अब मुझे इन symbols में से बहुत confusion होने वाला है. Like many of us are confused because we are praying to all kinds of figures and mountains and rivers and snakes and Kuber and snakes also coming up. We are praying to them but forgetting the very essence and substance that it is meant to symbolize. For example, I have given this example often and I never tire of giving it because it is the most powerful example to say how it is that we are misled in religious practices. And this example is that of the flag and the nation. The moment we worship, let's say, we revere, let's say, respect the flag, and we cannot stand the irreverence of the flag. And if we see anyone not standing up for the national anthem, all right, but these are abstract. They stand for the nation. They are not the nation. They just stand in place of the nation. So they are symbols. And therefore we have to be very careful, because this misunderstanding can lead to a lot of violence, as we have seen very recently in one of the holy places, where a poor man who was actually mentally deranged and also hungry and also not in complete control of his faculties, and he just reached out to some food items that he saw at the altar, and he reached out to feed himself, to have some food. And as he entered the altar, people pounced upon him and they actually lynched him to death. This is a recent example and it's heart-rending. But the thing for us to learn here is we can also get violent in our hearts when we don't know that that altar, so-called altar that the man jumped into or towards, that altar is also a symbol. And that man who jumped in is also actually one of the vibhutis of Bhagwan, which means he also carries a consciousness of Bhagwan. He is an ansh of Bhagwan. If we know these two truths, how can anybody be violent to anyone and say कि मेरे भगवान को कैसे छुआ, मेरे ग्रंथ को कैसे छुआ, and leading to violence. So, in short, let me just put it in short. An uneducated mind by education, once again, I don't mean education of the subjects of the world or literacy or numeracy. Here I mean the understanding of the ultimate truth about the Gyan, about the true learning. If we are not educated in the true learning, then it is as good as being an uneducated, violent brute. And that brutality and violence came from uneducated minds, not from religious, refined, sukshma, God-fearing, whatever you call it, religious minds. In no way can we term our minds religious if we have divided ourselves into sects and people and religion and societies and castes and classes and rich and poor. That division itself does not stand the scrutiny of God, because God has said, I am there in Sarva Bhutanam, I am there in everyone. So it's only a mind which is totally unlearned, uneducated, crude, violent. Right. These, and we carry the seeds of the same mind. Suppose somebody violates what we respect, or we revere, or we worship, that anger will arise in us. We may not take extreme steps, but that moment that anger arises, we have to watch it. Say because Bhagwan has said, Bhutanam asmi chetana, I am that consciousness in everything, remember, and these are only symbols. Moving further, number 24. Okay, I'm going to read 24 and then cover the rest later. Purodhasam cha mukhyam mam vidhi partha brihaspatim senaninamaham skandah sarasamasmi sagarah. Among the priests, household priests, know me as Brihaspati. And among the warriors, generals, the great generals, know me as Skanda. And among the water bodies, know me as the ocean. Why do the Skanda and Brihaspati and Sagar, what are these highest qualities which they carry? That we will see later. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om Shri